The first sign came as a subtle distortion in the atmosphere. Weather satellites captured an anomalous shimmer high above the Pacific Ocean, a ripple of light that seemed to fold and unfold like liquid glass. Dr. Elena Rodriguez studied the satellite imagery in her underground research facility, her fingers tracing the unusual pattern on the holographic display. "This isn't natural," she muttered, her voice echoing in the cramped monitoring station. Her assistant, Marcus Chen, adjusted his glasses and pulled up additional data streams. "Quantum fluctuations are off the charts. Whatever this is, it's unlike anything we've ever seen." 12 kilometers above the Pacific, the first Zarkon ships began to materialize. They were not the crude metal vessels of human imagination, but living constructs of crystalline biotechnology. Organic ships that pulsed with an inner light, their surfaces shifting and breathing like the skin of some massive, impossible creature. In New York, Jack Harper was conducting a routine security audit for a private defense contractor when the first reports came in. His military training kicked in immediately. The information scrolling across his tablet made no sense. Multiple atmospheric anomalies, communication disruptions, and unexplained energy signatures appearing simultaneously across global communication networks. "This is not a drill," he said quietly to himself, his hand already moving to the encrypted communication device he always carried. The invasion began with a silence more terrifying than any explosion. The Zarkon ships didn't announce themselves with weapons or traditional bombardment. Instead, they deployed a network of quantum disruptors that systematically shut down human technological infrastructure. Power grids flickered and died. Communication satellites went dark. Cellular networks collapsed into static. In Tokyo, entire districts went silent as the biomechanical ships descended. Their surfaces rippled with bioluminescent patterns, a language of light and energy that human eyes could barely comprehend. Advanced sensors began to probe the city's infrastructure, mapping every building, every communication line, every potential point of resistance. Dr. Rodriguez's facility was one of the few prepared for such an event. Years of theoretical research into quantum communications and potential extraterrestrial threats had led her to design a shielded research center. When the global communication networks collapsed, her systems remained partially operational. "Marcus, initiate protocol firewall," she commanded, her fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces. The facility's advanced quantum shielding activated, creating a localized bubble of technological stability. Around them, the world was going dark, but here, in this underground complex, they maintained a fragile connection to information and power. Jack Harper was already moving. His previous military connections and extensive network of contacts began to coalesce into something more than just communication. It became a lifeline. Former Special Forces operatives, cybersecurity experts, and strategic analysts started to ping each other through old, forgotten communication channels. The Zarkon's first mistake was assuming human technology was their only vulnerability. In the first hours of the invasion, major cities fell with clinical precision. London's financial district became a grid of crystalline structures, biomechanical constructs that absorbed and repurposed existing infrastructure. Paris saw its landmark buildings transformed into living observation points. Beijing's technological corridors were systematically neutralized. But humanity was not defenseless. Dr. Rodriguez discovered the first clue to the Zarkon's weakness while analyzing the quantum disruption patterns. There was a rhythm to their technological invasion, a predictable sequence that suggested a collective neural network more complex than any computer system. "They're connected," she told Marcus, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and excitement. "Every ship, every unit, they're part of a single consciousness. And like any network, they have vulnerabilities." Jack Harper was gathering survivors, transforming urban ruins into potential resistance points. His military background had prepared him for unconventional warfare, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The invasion was not just a military operation. It was a systematic attempt to understand and neutralize human potential. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, the world looked defeated. Major cities were under alien control. Governments had been systematically isolated and neutralized. Communication was almost impossible. But in underground facilities and hidden communication nodes, something was beginning to stir. A resistance that the Zarkon could never have anticipated. Humanity was not going to go quietly into the night. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath New York City had become more than just a network of forgotten passageways. They were now the central nervous system of human resistance. Jack Harper moved silently through the makeshift command center, his weathered hands tracing a digital map projected onto a worn concrete wall. Survivors from different walks of life had transformed this underground space into a hub of defiance. Former tech workers sat next to retired military personnel. Mechanics worked alongside teachers, all united by a single purpose. Sarah Kimura, a network engineer before the invasion, had jury-rigged a communication system using salvaged equipment and her extensive knowledge of underground signal routing. "We've identified 3 primary Zarkon control nodes," she reported, pointing to pulsing red markers on the map. "Each one controls a different sector of the city's infrastructure." Jack studied the map carefully. The Zarkon's occupation strategy was methodical. They didn't just conquer, they integrated. Entire city blocks had been transformed into living networks, buildings morphing to serve as observation and control points. But every complex system had weak points. Across the country, similar resistance cells were forming. In an old government bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was making her own discoveries. "The quantum signature is consistent," she told Marcus, her fingers manipulating holographic data streams. "Their neural network operates on a collective consciousness principle, but there are individual processing nodes that can be isolated." Marcus Chen looked up from a set of complex calculations. "If we can develop a targeted disruption protocol, we might be able to create localized communication blackouts within their network." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rodriguez's team had been studying captured fragments of Zarkon technology, microscopic components that seemed to blur the line between biological and mechanical systems. What appeared to be random patterns began to reveal themselves as a complex communication language. Back in the New York Subway Command Center, Jack was preparing their first coordinated resistance operation. Intelligence suggested a Zarkon monitoring station had been established in the remains of the Chrysler Building. Its crystalline structures now pulsed with an alien blue-green light, absorbing and processing information about the surrounding city. "We're not looking to destroy," Jack explained to his team of 30 carefully selected survivors. "We're looking to disrupt and learn." The team was a mosaic of human potential. Carlos Ramirez, a former Special Forces operator, had developed innovative camouflage techniques, using materials that could partially block the Zarkon's advanced scanning technologies. Aisha Patel, a quantum physics graduate student, had theories about exploiting the alien technology's communication vulnerabilities. Their first mission was surgical. A small team would infiltrate the Chrysler Building, gather intelligence, and escape before the Zarkon could fully respond. It was a high-risk operation with potentially game-changing intelligence as the reward. As night fell over the occupied city, the resistance moved with precision. Carlos's camouflage techniques worked better than anyone expected. The Zarkon's scanning technologies, so advanced in some respects, had a fundamental blind spot when it came to understanding human adaptability. Inside the transformed Chrysler Building, the alien environment was both beautiful and terrifying. Crystalline structures grew like living organisms, pulsing with complex light patterns that seemed to breathe and think. Alien technology interfaced with the building's original infrastructure, creating a hybrid environment that defied human architectural understanding. The resistance team moved silently, using improvised tools to bypass alien sensors. Aisha worked quickly, her portable quantum scanner collecting vital data about the Zarkon's communication network. "I'm seeing something extraordinary," she whispered into her encrypted communication device. Their network isn't just a communication system. It's almost like a collective consciousness. But there are individual nodes that operate with a degree of independence. Meanwhile, Dr. Rodriguez was making her own breakthrough. By analyzing the quantum disruption patterns, she had discovered a potential weakness in the Zarkon's technological infrastructure. It's like their entire system is one massive interconnected organism, she explained to Marcus. But organisms can be infected, can be disrupted. As the first resistance mission concluded, successful beyond their wildest expectations, a spark of hope began to spread. The Zarkon had believed humanity would be easily conquered. They had not anticipated the power of human creativity, adaptability, and sheer determination. The resistance was just beginning. The abandoned Tesla manufacturing plant in Nevada had been transformed into humanity's most critical research facility. Where electric vehicle production lines once stood, now an unprecedented collaboration of scientists, engineers, and survivors worked to unlock the secrets of alien technology. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display, her team surrounding her like a war council of scientific minds. Fragments of captured Zarkon technology were suspended in quantum stabilization fields, their crystalline structures revealing intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner life. "We're not just reverse engineering," Elena explained to the assembled researchers. "We're learning an entirely new language of technology." Marcus Chen manipulated the holographic display, revealing microscopic networks within the alien components. "Look here," he said, highlighting a complex interweaving of biomechanical structures. Their technology doesn't distinguish between living and mechanical systems. It's more like a living organism than a machine. The research team included survivors from every conceivable background. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a retired nanotechnology expert, worked alongside Zara Wilson, a 23-year-old computer engineer who had been developing quantum computing algorithms before the invasion. Military veterans provided tactical insights, while mathematicians and physicists worked to understand the alien technology's fundamental principles. In a separate laboratory, Aisha Patel was making her own breakthrough. The quantum physicist had discovered a unique property in the captured alien communication modules, a resonance frequency that could potentially disrupt their neural network. "It's not about destroying their technology," Aisha explained to her assistant. "It's about understanding its fundamental communication method and finding a way to interrupt it." Across the facility, makeshift workshops transformed everything from automotive parts to medical equipment into potential weapons and defensive technologies. Carlos Ramirez, the former Special Forces operator, was developing adaptive camouflage technologies that could help resistance fighters move undetected through Zarkon-controlled territories. Jack Harper arrived at the facility, bringing intelligence gathered from resistance cells across the country. His military background and strategic mind provided crucial context for the scientific team's discoveries. "We've identified 3 primary Zarkon control centers," Jack reported to Elena and her team. "Each one operates like a neural hub, coordinating their occupation efforts. If we can develop a targeted disruption protocol, we might create significant vulnerabilities in their network." The first major breakthrough came unexpectedly. Dr. Tanaka discovered that the alien technology had a critical weakness. A quantum entanglement process that allowed their network to communicate could be temporarily destabilized by introducing a specific electromagnetic pulse. "It's like finding the precise frequency that can make an entire communication network stutter," he explained, his eyes bright with excitement. "We're not just talking about jamming their signals. We're talking about creating momentary blind spots in their entire technological infrastructure." The team began developing what they called the quantum disruptor, a device small enough to be carried by a single operative, but powerful enough to create temporary communication blackouts in Zarkon-controlled areas. Their first prototype was nothing like traditional weapons. It looked more like a complex scientific instrument, a blend of salvaged alien technology and human engineering. Compact circuits interweaved with biomechanical components, creating a device that seemed to blur the line between machine and living organism. Elena understood the significance of their work. This wasn't just about fighting back. It was about proving humanity's capacity for adaptation and innovation. The Zarkon believed they could simply overwhelm us with technology. She told Jack during a late-night strategy session. They never considered that our greatest strength is our ability to learn, to adapt, to transform. As the first batch of quantum disruptors came off the improvised production line, a sense of hope began to spread through the resistance networks. These were not just weapons. They were a statement, a declaration that humanity would not be passive in the face of invasion. Outside the facility, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly, a reminder of the world they were fighting to reclaim. Inside, humanity was writing a new chapter of technological evolution. The resistance was no longer just surviving. They were preparing to fight back. The Galactic Communication Network was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Quantum-entangled communication arrays spanning thousands of light-years transformed information into living streams of data, where thoughts and observations could be shared faster than light itself. On the central hub of the Galactic Council, representatives from hundreds of civilizations watched the unfolding story of Earth with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. The Zarkon Collective had always been viewed as an unstoppable force, a technological civilization that had systematically conquered or subjugated countless worlds. And now something extraordinary was happening. Ambassador Zuraka of the Luminarian Confederation studied the data streams carefully. Her crystalline form shifted with complex emotional patterns, a language of light and energy that conveyed meaning far beyond human comprehension. The quantum recordings of human resistance were unlike anything in the galactic archives. They are adapting, Zuraka communicated to the assembled council members. Her thought patterns created ripples of light that translated into multiple linguistic matrices. The humans are not just resisting. They are learning. The galactic archives held centuries of invasion records. Hundreds of civilizations had fallen to the Zarkon Collective. Most were assimilated within weeks, their technological and cultural identities completely erased. But Earth was different. Fragments of intercepted communication showed human resistance cells developing technologies that defied conventional understanding. A quantum disruption device that could temporarily blind the Zarkon's communication networks. Adaptive camouflage technologies. Strategies that seemed to emerge from pure creativity, rather than established military doctrine. On a distant research station, a team of xenanthropologists began intensive studies of the human response. Dr. Kellex, a renowned researcher from the Nexus Exploration Institute, compiled initial observations. The humans demonstrate a level of technological adaptability unprecedented in our records, the report read. Where most species would collapse under such an invasion, they are actively developing counter-strategies that exploit fundamental weaknesses in the Zarkon's technological infrastructure. The quantum communication network began to buzz with speculation. Some galactic civilizations saw hope. Others saw a potential threat. The Zarkon Collective, for the first time in their history, found themselves under intense scrutiny. Certain liberated worlds, those that had suffered under Zarkon occupation, began to transmit encrypted support signals. These were not official communications, but quantum-encoded messages of solidarity that danced through the communication networks like silent prayers. Back on Earth, Jack Harper and Dr. Elena Rodriguez were unaware of the galactic attention. They were focused on their next move, their next strategy of resistance. The quantum disruptor tests were successful, Elena reported during a strategy meeting in the underground Nevada facility. We can now create localized communication blackouts in Zarkon-controlled territories. Jack studied the tactical maps, his military mind already calculating potential scenarios. It's not just about creating disruptions, he said. We need to understand their response patterns. Every time we create a vulnerability, we learn something new about their system. The resistance had become more than a military operation. It was a massive, distributed research project. Every resistance cell was collecting data. Every survival group was a potential source of intelligence. In the Galactic Council's central chamber, Ambassador Zireka made a recommendation that would shock the entire diplomatic community. "We should not intervene," she communicated, her thought patterns creating complex light displays that conveyed nuanced meaning. "The humans are demonstrating a capacity for resistance that transcends traditional technological warfare. They are writing a new chapter of galactic history." The statement was revolutionary. For generations, the Galactic Council had maintained a policy of non-intervention during Zarkon invasions. But Earth was different. The humans were not just fighting. They were transforming the very understanding of technological conflict. As data streams continued to flow, as quantum communications carried fragments of human resistance across light years, one thing became clear. The galaxy was watching. And what they saw was changing everything. The first coordinated global strike began at precisely 300 hours, a moment when the Zarkon's quantum communication networks experienced their most predictable cycle of data transmission. Jack Harper stood in the underground command center, his fingers moving across holographic displays with surgical precision. Resistance cells from every continent were synchronized, their movements calculated down to the millisecond. This was more than a military operation. It was a planetary symphony of defiance. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the quantum disruption protocols, her team of scientists and engineers working in perfect harmony. The quantum disruptor devices they had developed were about to face their ultimate test. "Transmission sequence initiated," Marcus Chen announced, his voice steady but electric with anticipation. Across the globe, resistance teams moved with practiced coordination. In the ruins of Shanghai, a team led by Lai Wei infiltrated a primary Zarkon observation node. Beneath the streets of Rio de Janeiro, another group prepared to exploit a critical communication junction. From the Australian outback to the mountains of Afghanistan, human resistance cells were about to demonstrate something the Zarkon had never anticipated. The attack was not about destruction. It was about information, about creating strategic vulnerabilities in the alien occupation's complex neural network. Jack's mission was the most critical. A carefully selected team would attempt to capture a primary Zarkon command ship, a feat that seemed impossible by any conventional military standard. Their target was a massive crystalline structure hovering above what was once Washington, D.C., a living technological marvel that served as a central control point for the North American occupation. "Remember," Jack briefed his team, "we're not looking to destroy. We're looking to understand." The quantum disruptor devices began their work. Precisely calculated electromagnetic pulses created momentary blind spots in the Zarkon's communication network. It was like introducing microsecond-long moments of technological aphasia into their collective consciousness. Dr. Rodriguez watched the data streams with scientific intensity. "The disruption is working," she told Marcus. "We're creating windows of opportunity that didn't exist before." The captured Zarkon technology they had been studying proved invaluable. Each piece of alien equipment was a puzzle, and humanity was becoming fluent in its language. The biomechanical systems that seemed incomprehensible weeks ago now revealed their underlying patterns. Jack's team approached the command ship using a combination of adaptive camouflage and quantum disruption techniques. The massive crystalline structure seemed to breathe, its surfaces shifting and pulsing with complex energy patterns. To the untrained eye, it would have looked impossible to infiltrate. But humans had become experts at the impossible. As the first resistance operatives made contact with the ship's outer membrane, something extraordinary happened. The biomechanical structure seemed to hesitate, its quantum communication networks momentarily confused by the hybrid human-alien technologies they had developed. Inside the command ship, the interior was a living network of light and energy. Quantum communication pathways created three-dimensional maps of occupied territories. Biological and mechanical systems intertwined in ways that defied traditional understanding of technology. "We're in." Jack's communication device crackled, initiating data extraction. The mission was about more than capturing a ship. It was about understanding the Zarkon's entire approach to invasion and occupation. Every piece of data, Every quantum communication pattern would provide critical intelligence. Dr. Rodriguez's team monitored the operation with scientific precision. The communication disruptions are creating cascade failures in their network, she observed. We're not just blocking their signals, we're introducing fundamental uncertainties into their collective system. As the hours passed, the impossible began to happen. Resistance cells around the world started to push back against Zarkon-controlled territories. The quantum disruption techniques created moments of vulnerability that human teams exploited with increasing confidence. The Zarkon had believed humanity would be a simple conquest. They had not anticipated a species that could transform defeat into an opportunity for innovation. Jack's voice came through the communication network, calm and determined. Primary objective achieved. We're bringing home something that will change everything. The first major counterattack was complete, and nothing would be the same again. The data extracted from the captured Zarkon command ship became a turning point in the Resistance's strategy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team worked tirelessly, decoding complex quantum communication patterns that revealed the intricate connections between occupied worlds. This is more than just a technological network, Elena explained to Jack Harper during a late-night strategy session. It's a living ecosystem of control. Each occupied world is connected, but they're not all connected equally. The quantum communication maps revealed critical information. Some worlds under Zarkon occupation maintain more autonomy than others. Small pockets of resistance had existed for generations, suppressed but never completely extinguished. Jack studied the holographic display, his tactical mind seeing patterns that went beyond military strategy. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore, he said quietly. We're creating a roadmap for liberation. Across the galaxy, the first communications began to slip through. Encrypted quantum signals, piggybacking on Zarkon communication networks, reached worlds that had been isolated for generations. These were not just messages of resistance, they were blueprints for rebellion. On the desert world of Crestal, a species that had been under Zarkon occupation for over 3 centuries received the first communication. Their technological infrastructure had been systematically dismantled, their culture suppressed. But the human-developed quantum disruption techniques provided a window of opportunity. Ariek, a local resistance leader, gathered her people in underground caverns. The message from Earth was simple but profound. You are not alone. Similar scenes played out across multiple star systems. The Luminarian Confederation, which had long maintained a policy of diplomatic neutrality, began to reconsider its stance. Ambassador Zirika's recommendation to observe the human resistance was proving to be more than just a diplomatic curiosity. Back on Earth, the resistance had transformed. What began as a defensive operation was now a coordinated liberation strategy. Dr. Rodriguez's team developed communication protocols that could be adapted by different species, taking into account their unique technological and biological characteristics. It's not about exporting our solution, Elena explained to her team. It's about providing a framework for resistance that each world can customize. Jack Harper worked with a growing network of international and now interstellar resistance leaders. Former military strategists, scientists, and survivors from different worlds began to share intelligence, developing a comprehensive approach to challenging the Zarkon collective. The captured command ship provided unprecedented insights. Its biomechanical systems were slowly revealing their secrets, showing how the Zarkon maintained control through a complex network of quantum communication and biological integration. They don't just occupy worlds, Marcus Chen discovered during one of their deep analysis sessions. They fundamentally alter the technological and biological infrastructure of occupied territories. This revelation became a key strategy. By understanding the Zarkon's method of control, resistance movements could develop targeted methods of disruption. On Crestal, Ariek and her resistance cell used the human-developed quantum disruption techniques to create momentary communication blackouts. Each successful operation gave them more information, more hope. The Galactic communication network began to change. What was once a tool of Zarkon control became a conduit for resistance. Quantum communication pathways that had been used to suppress information now carried messages of hope and strategies of liberation. Alina discovered something even more extraordinary. The Zarkon's technological network, designed to be a unified system of control, contained inherent vulnerabilities. Their collective consciousness, which they believed was their greatest strength, was also their most significant weakness. They've created a system so interconnected that a disruption in one area can create cascading failures across entire sectors, she explained to Jack and the Resistance leadership. The Resistance was no longer just about survival. It was about transformation. Each liberated world, each successful communication, each moment of disruption was rewriting the rules of galactic power. Jack looked at the evolving holographic map of Resistance activities. What had started as a planetary defense had become a galactic movement. "We're not just fighting," he said to Alina. "We're showing the galaxy what's possible when species refuse to be controlled." The sparks of liberation were spreading, and nothing could stop them now. The final battle was not what anyone had expected. The Zarkon Collective's primary command center hung in space like a massive crystalline fortress, a living technological marvel that had dominated galactic politics for centuries. Surrounding it was a fleet of biomechanical ships, their surfaces shifting and pulsing with complex energy patterns that defied traditional understanding of spacecraft. Jack Harper stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, a vessel that represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Assembled from the combined technological contributions of liberated worlds, the ship was a testament to collaborative innovation. Humans worked alongside representatives from a dozen different species, each bringing their unique technological and strategic insights. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the quantum communication networks, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that blended human and alien technologies. "The disruption protocols are ready," she reported. "We got one chance to get this right." The Coalition fleet was unlike any military force in galactic history. Where traditional warfare relied on brute force, this was a symphony of strategic disruption. Each ship carried quantum disruptors developed by human researchers, adaptive technologies from the Luminarian Confederation, and tactical systems created by survivors from dozens of previously occupied worlds. Ambassador Ziraka of the Luminarian Confederation transmitted strategic coordinates. Her crystalline form projected holographic battle plans that showed the intricate weaknesses in the Zarkon's collective communication network. "Their strength is their greatest vulnerability," Ziraka communicated. The thought translated across multiple linguistic matrices. A collective consciousness can be disrupted at its core. The battle began not with weapons, but with information. Quantum disruption waves spread through the Zarkon fleet like a technological virus. Their biomechanical ships, so advanced they seemed almost alive, began to falter. Communication pathways that had maintained their collective consciousness for generations started to fragment. Jack coordinated multiple resistance teams. A group from Earth worked alongside survivors from Crestal, their communication seamless despite coming from worlds light years apart. Each team targeted a specific vulnerability in the Zarkon's technological infrastructure. "We're not just fighting," Jack told the assembled coalition leaders. "We're rewriting the fundamental rules of galactic conflict." Alina's team had spent months studying the captured Zarkon command ship. They understood now that this was more than a military engagement. It was a confrontation of fundamentally different approaches to technology, communication, and existence. The Zarkon Collective's primary command center began to respond. Its massive crystalline structure shifted and pulsed, attempting to adapt to the unprecedented attack. But for the first time, it was on the defensive. Resistance cells from previously occupied worlds launched simultaneous attacks. Each strike was carefully coordinated, exploiting the vulnerabilities they had learned from human resistance techniques. The quantum communication network that had once been a tool of oppression now became a weapon of liberation. Targeting primary neural junction, a resistance operator reported. The voice came from a communications officer born on a world that had been under Zarkon control for generations. The battle was unlike any in galactic history. It wasn't about destruction, but about liberation. Each quantum disruption, each strategic strike was designed to free, not to annihilate. Alina discovered something extraordinary in the midst of the conflict. The Zarkon's collective consciousness, which had seemed invincible, was actually incredibly fragile. Their interconnected system meant that a disruption in one area could create catastrophic failures across their entire network. "We're not destroying them," she said to Jack. "We're giving them a choice to exist differently." The final moments of the battle were almost anticlimactic. The massive Zarkon command center began to fragment, its complex biomechanical systems unable to maintain cohesion under the coordinated assault. Jack watched the holographic displays, understanding that this was more than a military victory. This was a fundamental transformation of galactic power structures. As the Zarkon's primary command center began to dissolve, something unexpected happened. Parts of their technological network started to reorganize, to adapt in ways no one had anticipated. The galaxy washed, and everything changed. The aftermath of the conflict was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Dr. Alina Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the newly established Galactic Cooperative Research Station, watching the star-filled expanse. The station itself was a testament to the transformative power of the Resistance, a collaborative project that brought together technologies and perspectives from dozens of liberated worlds. Jack Harper joined her, his military posture softened by years of diplomatic work. "Hard to believe how much has changed," he said, looking out at the stars. The Zarkon Collective no longer existed as a unified force. Instead, what remained of their technological network had transformed into something entirely new, a decentralized system of communication and cooperation that defied previous understanding of collective consciousness. Ambassador Zuraka of the Luminarian Confederation approached, her crystalline form shifting with complex emotional patterns. The galactic records will show this as a moment of fundamental transformation. She communicated, her thought patterns creating intricate light displays that translated across multiple linguistic matrices. The Galactic Cooperative had emerged from the Resistance, a new political and scientific alliance that prioritized collaboration over conquest. Worlds that had been isolated for generations were now sharing technologies, cultural knowledge, and collective insights. Alina's research team had become the cornerstone of a new approach to understanding collective technological systems. The lessons learned from resisting the Zarkon had opened up entirely new fields of study. How could complex systems communicate? How could diverse technologies work together without losing individual identity? "We're not just rebuilding," Alina explained during a strategy session. "We're reimagining what's possible." Jack worked with a diverse coalition of liberation leaders. Former resistance fighters from different worlds now served as diplomatic coordinators, their experiences of survival transforming into a new approach to galactic governance. The technologies developed during the Resistance continued to evolve. Quantum communication networks that had once been tools of oppression now became conduits of unprecedented collaboration. Worlds that had been technologically suppressed for generations began to share their unique perspectives. On Earth, the Resistance had transformed society completely. The global cooperation that emerged during the invasion had fundamentally changed how humans viewed themselves and their place in the galaxy. Educational systems were redesigned to emphasize adaptability, collaborative problem-solving, and interspecies communication. Ariuk, the Resistance leader from Crystal, now served as a key advisor in the Galactic Cooperative. Her world, once completely dominated by the Zarkon, had become a center of technological innovation and cultural exchange. "We learned that strength is not about control," Ariuk often said. "It's about connection." The captured Zarkon technologies continued to provide insights. What had once been seen as a weapon of oppression was now being studied as a complex form of collective communication. Scientists and researchers from multiple worlds worked together, breaking down the barriers between biological and technological systems. Jack and Alina found themselves at the center of this transformation. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of resistance, had become a symbol of what was possible when diverse perspectives worked together. We never just fought, Jack reflected during one of their strategy sessions. We created something new. The Galactic Cooperative established research centers on multiple worlds. Each facility was a blend of technologies and perspectives, challenging previous notions of scientific and cultural boundaries. Humans worked alongside species that had once seemed completely alien, their collaborative efforts pushing the boundaries of technological and cultural understanding. Ambassador Ziraka's final report to the Galactic Council captured the essence of the transformation. The resistance was not about defeating an enemy. It was about reimagining what was possible. Humanity did not just fight. They showed us a new way of existing. As Elena looked out at the stars, she understood that the true victory was not in defeating the Zarkon. It was in creating something entirely new. The galaxy would never be the same.